A cold wind rattles through the marsh grass along Ocean Parkway. It's December 2010, just weeks before Christmas, and the early winter air carries a strange silence across the barrier islands of Long Island. At first glance, it feels like any other night in Suffolk County. Dark water pushing against the shore, headlights streaking down the highway, and the distant glow of New York City just 40 miles west. But beneath the surface of this ordinary night lies a secret that will soon unravel into one of America's most chilling modern mysteries. That secret begins with a missing woman, a desperate 911 call, and a search that will uncover far more than anyone could have imagined. The story begins with Shannan Gilbert, a 24-year-old woman from Jersey City, New Jersey. Shannan was working as an escort, advertising her services through Craigslist, which in the late 2000s had become a hub for underground encounters. On the night of May 1st, 2010, Shannan traveled to Oak Beach, a quiet, gated community near Gilgo Beach, to meet a client. But something went wrong. Just after 4:50 a.m., Shannan made a frantic call to 911 that lasted more than 20 minutes. She screamed into the phone that someone was after her, that they were trying to kill her. Dispatchers tried to trace her location, but in a maze of side streets and marshland, her exact position remained unclear. What happened in those minutes remains one of the most haunting elements of the case. Shannan fled from the house of her client, running into the night, barefoot and terrified. She banged on the doors of neighbors, pleading for help, but by the time police arrived, she was gone. For months, her family begged for answers, pushing law enforcement to continue the search. And then, in December 2010, while searching for Shannan, police made a gruesome discovery. Along Ocean Parkway, hidden beneath thick brambles and tall grass, they found human remains. Not Shannan's, but another woman's. Within days, more remains were uncovered. 4 bodies in total, all within a quarter-mile of each other. 4 women who had vanished in similar circumstances. 4 women who, like Shannan, had worked as escorts. The police had stumbled upon something much bigger than a single missing person. They had uncovered the hunting grounds of a serial killer. Before we go deeper into this chilling case, I'd love to know, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city or state in the comments. And as the details unfold, tell us, do you believe the Long Island serial killer was the work of a single predator, or could multiple killers be responsible for this disturbing trail of death? Also, if you're drawn to haunting mysteries like this one, please hit the like button and subscribe. It helps us keep these cases alive, and it ensures that stories like this one are never forgotten. Long Island is not just a suburb of New York. It's a place of stark contrasts. On one side, there's wealth, gated communities, beachfront mansions, and summer homes owned by some of New York's most powerful families. On the other, there are struggling towns, working-class neighborhoods, and forgotten stretches of marshland. Gilgo Beach, where the remains were found, lies on a narrow strip of Barrier Island, flanked by the Atlantic Ocean on one side and the Great South Bay on the other. It's remote, windswept, and quiet in the off-season. The kind of place where someone could scream in the night and not be heard. The perfect setting for secrets to linger. The victims found in December 2010 were quickly linked together. They became known as the Gilgo Four. Each woman was in her 20s, each had advertised escort services online, and each had vanished between 2007 and 2010. Their names: Maureen Brainerd Barnes, last seen in New York City in 2007. Melissa Barthélemy, who disappeared in 2009. Megan Waterman, from Maine, missing since June 2010. And Amber Lynn Costello, who vanished in September of that same year. All 4 were wrapped in burlap, their remains concealed in the brush, left just yards from the busy Ocean Parkway. The similarities between them were chillingly precise, suggesting the work of a single killer with a clear and deliberate pattern. As investigators widened their search, more bodies began to surface. By spring of 2011, the count had grown to 10 sets of human remains. Some were linked to escorts. Others were partial remains, dismembered, and scattered in multiple locations. One victim was a toddler. Another, an unidentified Asian male. Suddenly, The Gilgo case was no longer just the story of four women. It had become a sprawling mystery stretching back decades, with multiple victims, different disposal methods, and theories that spiraled into every corner of New York true crime lore. The press began calling the unknown perpetrator the Long Island serial killer, or Lisk. But who he or they were, no one knew. To understand the gravity of the case, you have to look at each victim not just as part of a pattern, but as a human being whose life ended in unimaginable terror. Maureen Brainerd Barnes was 25, a single mother from Connecticut. She had turned to escort work to support her children, hoping it would be temporary. Melissa Barthélemy was 24, originally from Buffalo, with dreams of becoming a hairdresser. After she vanished, her younger sister received a series of chilling phone calls from Melissa's phone. A man's voice taunted her, saying things too graphic to repeat, words that confirmed Melissa was never coming home. Megan Waterman was just 22, a young mother from Maine, last seen leaving a hotel in Hauppauge, Long Island. And Amberlynn Costello was 27, living in West Babylon, known by her friends as someone with a warm laugh but a troubled past. Each woman carried her own story, her own struggles, her own circle of family and friends devastated by the loss. Together, their fates told a much darker story. A predator who specifically targeted women on society's margins. Women who could vanish without immediate notice. Women the killer believed would not be missed. He was wrong. Their families never stopped searching, and their names have never faded from the case. As news spread of the discoveries, the Suffolk County Police Department came under immediate pressure. How could 10 bodies be hidden in plain sight, so close to one of Long Island's busiest roads for so many years? Why had it taken so long to connect the disappearances? Some blamed limited resources. Others pointed to corruption and incompetence within the department itself. What made matters worse was the growing distrust between police and the victims' families. Too often, law enforcement was dismissive, referring to the women as prostitutes, rather than focusing on the fact that they were victims of murder. This tension would only grow deeper as the years dragged on without answers. But what made the case so baffling wasn't just the number of bodies. It was the differences among them. The Gilgo Four were similar, carefully wrapped in burlap, their remains intact. But other victims, like Jessica Taylor and Valerie Mack, had been dismembered, their partial remains found miles apart, some in Gilgo, others near Jones Beach, or even further east in Manorville. This raised the question, was this the work of one killer who evolved his methods over time? Or were there multiple killers using the same dumping ground? Some investigators leaned toward the latter, suggesting that Gilgo Beach had become a kind of graveyard for predators operating in the shadows of New York. Others believed the changes in disposal could reflect the killer's experimentation, his attempt to refine his technique or confuse investigators. Either way, the mystery deepened. For the residents of Long Island, the discoveries shattered any sense of safety. Gilgo Beach had long been seen as a summer escape, a place of fishing, boating, and quiet weekends. Now it was a crime scene. Reporters swarmed the area, helicopters buzzed overhead, and families of the missing stood before cameras pleading for justice. Behind the scenes, the investigation was sprawling. Hundreds of tips, dozens of suspects, and thousands of hours of surveillance. Yet despite all the manpower, progress was painfully slow. The investigation into the Long Island serial killer was massive, but from the very beginning, it was plagued with controversy. Detectives from Suffolk County scoured phone records, combed through hotel surveillance footage, and traced digital footprints left by the victims' online ads. But one problem loomed large over the case: trust. Many families of the victims felt dismissed, ignored, or outright disrespected by law enforcement. Too often, the women were described as just escorts, as if their lives somehow carried less weight. For the families, that indifference was infuriating. For the killer, it may have been an advantage, one that allowed him to hunt for years without serious scrutiny. One of the first major clues came from the phone of victim Melissa Barthélemy. After she vanished, her younger sister began receiving calls from Melissa's number. The caller, a man with a cold, taunting voice, admitted he had killed Melissa. He mocked the family, ridiculed their pain, and even gave chilling details only the killer could know. The calls were traced to crowded areas in Midtown Manhattan, including near Madison Square Garden. But by the time police arrived, the man was gone. Whoever he was careful, calculated, and brazen enough to risk contact with the victim's family. It was the kind of taunt that suggested he felt untouchable. The investigation also revealed that many of the victims had used burner phones to communicate with clients. These disposable phones made it nearly impossible to track patterns. But the killer also used phones. Records showed he had contacted at least some of the women using prepaid devices, each activated briefly before going dark again. He was meticulous about avoiding detection, but not perfect. Investigators began piecing together towers that the calls had pinged, narrowing down possible locations. Still, no definitive suspect emerged. As the months passed, speculation grew. Theories flooded in from the press, internet forums, and even retired detectives. Some believed the killer was a police officer or had law enforcement training, given the knowledge of investigation tactics and the ability to elude detection. Others suspected a local resident of Oak Beach, the gated community where Shannan Gilbert was last seen. Shannan's frantic 911 call mentioned someone chasing her, someone she believed wanted to kill her. But the audio of that call was kept sealed for years, fueling rumors and conspiracy theories about who might have been involved. Was it the client she had met that night? Was it someone else from the neighborhood? Or was Shannan's death even connected to the other women at all? Police would later insist it was not, that her death was accidental, the result of her running into the marsh and drowning. Her family and many others strongly disagreed. The case took another turn when police found links between remains in Gilgo Beach and other crime scenes further east in Manorville, an area of dense woods about 45 miles away. Jessica Taylor, whose torso had been discovered in Manorville in 2003, was later matched with partial remains found in Gilgo. Valerie Mack, another Manorville victim from 2000, was also connected through DNA. The idea that a single killer could be operating across decades, using multiple dumping grounds, made the investigation even more complex. Were these all the work of Lisk? Or had Gilgo Beach simply become a convenient site for more than one killer? Even today, law enforcement remains divided on that question. Public suspicion soon turned toward a handful of men. One was Dr. Peter Hackett, a resident of Oak Beach. After Shannan disappeared, Hackett allegedly called Shannan's mother, claiming he ran a home for wayward girls and had taken Shannan in before she vanished. Later, he denied ever making the call, though phone records proved otherwise. His inconsistent statements and proximity to Shannan's last known location made him a person of interest in the public eye, though he was never charged. Another was James Bissett, a local businessman who co-owned a plant nursery that supplied burlap, the very material some of the Gilgo victims had been wrapped in. In 2011, Bissett died by suicide, only deepening speculation. But again, no evidence directly tied him to the murders. Then there was John Bittrolf, a carpenter from Manorville who, in 2014, was convicted of murdering 2 women in the early 1990s. Both of his known victims were sex workers, both found in wooded areas not far from where other remains had surfaced. Some investigators wondered if Bittrolf could also be responsible for the Gilgo murders. DNA evidence linked him to his 1990s crimes, but no direct link to the Gilgo victims has ever been proven. Still, his proximity, his methods, and his history of violence made him a compelling suspect in the public's imagination. The truth, however, remained elusive until more than a decade later. In July 2023, Suffolk County Police made a stunning announcement. They had arrested a man named Rex Hoyerman, a 59-year-old architect from Massapequa Park, Long Island. Hoyerman was charged with the murders of 3 of the Gilgo 4, Megan Waterman, Melissa Barthélemy, and Amber Costello. Evidence against him included burner phone records, DNA recovered from hair found on the victims, and surveillance tying his vehicle to the crime scenes. Hoyerman, married with children, had lived an unassuming life in a suburban neighborhood, commuting into Manhattan for work. Neighbors described him as quiet but odd, sometimes intimidating. Investigators alleged he had meticulously planned the killings, using disposable phones, disguises, and careful timing to avoid suspicion. For many, his arrest was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. But even with Hoyerman in custody, the case is far from over. He has pleaded not guilty, and while evidence is strong, trials take time. More importantly, his arrest doesn't answer every question. He has not been charged in the death of Shannan Gilbert. He has not been connected to the toddler, the Asian male, or the dismembered victims linked to Manorville. That leaves the haunting possibility that while Hoyerman may be responsible for some of the murders, other predators could still be out there. Perhaps Gilgo Beach was not just the hunting ground of one killer, but a dumping ground for several. The aftermath of the Gilgo case has left a lasting scar on Long Island. Families of the victims continue to fight for justice, holding vigils, demanding accountability, and keeping their loved ones' memories alive. Shannan Gilbert's mother, Mari, became a relentless advocate until her own tragic death in 2016. Shannan's sisters carry on that fight today. For the families of the Gilgo Four, Hoyerman's arrest offers some measure of hope, but also the agonizing reminder that answers came far too late. For the unidentified victims, their stories remain unfinished, their names still unknown. And for the rest of us, the case raises chilling questions. How many serial killers operate in the shadows, unnoticed, because their victims are people society chooses to ignore? How many more bodies lie hidden in forgotten stretches of marsh and woods? And how many families are still waiting for a phone call that will never come? Some mysteries never fade. They linger decade after decade like an open wound. The Long Island serial killer is one of them. Whether the case ends with Rex Hoyerman or widens into something even darker, one truth remains. The victims deserve to be remembered not as statistics, but as daughters, sisters, mothers, and friends whose lives were stolen. As the tide continues to wash against Gilgo Beach, the secrets buried in its sand remind us that evil can hide anywhere, even just beyond the lights of the biggest city in America. Do you believe Rex Hoyerman is the Long Island serial killer, or is he just one piece of a much larger puzzle? Share your theories in the comments below. And if you want us to continue uncovering the world's darkest unsolved mysteries, hit the like button, subscribe to Dark Case Files, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story we bring to light.